Okay, well, we're here, and I don't know if anyone else is here. Oh, shoot. Just a sec. Okay. Let's see if this works. All right. I am here. I don't know how many other people are here, but I'm going to go ahead. And for those of you who want checking this out later, sorry for some of the issues there. I am going to be going over the poetry prompt, and we are in particular paying attention to just a second. We are going to be looking at the poetry prompt from 2018. Okay, so technical difficulties here, but we'll get going here in a second. Okay, so we're going to do the 2018 prompt, Plants by Olive Senior. And I just wanted to remind you about the AP Lit exam. Multiple choice is important. 45% of your score approximately, depending on kind of how people do any given year, but roughly 45% of the score. It is an hour long, 55 questions, one half prose, one half poetry, one half older, one half modern. And then we move into the free response questions, and that is approximately 55% of your score. 2 hours, 3 essay questions or prompts. First of all, the poetry prompt. Second of all, the prose prompt. Third of all, the open prompt. And we're going to talk about the poetry prompt today, and we're going to get some practice just kind of looking at it together. If anyone's here, if not, I'll just look at it by myself and kind of go through the process that we've been talking about. And you can check this out. And it is the most recent prompt. So anyways, remember that the poetry prompt is as follows. It always is. How do poets use poetic techniques to convey meaning? And poetic techniques can be phrased poetic devices, formal elements such as how, convey, we see support, reveal, reflect, contribute to, express, develop, communicate. And meaning can be message, complex response, attitude, state of mind, perception, view, relationship between, or significance. So we've talked about this before, but that poetry prompt year in and year out. And so you can get used to that and really get good at that. Today, we're going to be doing Plants by Olive Senior. And, this threw some people for a loop last year. But if you haven't accessed it already, I think it would be a good idea to go here. It is on the second page of the free response questions. Okay, it's actually all the free response questions from 2018. And as we look at the prompt together, so let's actually jump out of here really quick and let's look at the prompt together. Carefully read Olive Senior's 2005 poem, Plants. Then, in a well-organized, poet portrays the complex relationship among the speaker, the implied audience, and plant life. You may wish to consider the author's use of such literary devices as syntax, diction, and figurative language. Okay, so let's go back to this poetry prompt. Let's see if I advance this. So here. we have so poetic techniques convey meaning. And in this particular prompt, poetic techniques is called literary techniques. And the ones listed here, now remember, they list ones we do not need to use them, are syntax, diction, and figurative language. Those were the ones that were listed off, techniques such as syntax, diction, and figurative language. Okay, so as I look at this poem, I'm seeing some other things. I'm also seeing a little bit of structural things that I find interesting. Now, syntax is an aspect of structure, but I'm actually noticing some things about the structure of line breaks, structure, the form of the poem, and I'm thinking that I might be able to make something of that. Allusion. As I read this poem, and we'll look at it together, I was kind of wondering if she was alluding to colonialism, and she is a Jamaican poet, and so Jamaica obviously has an experience with colonialism. There are a lot of references to colonialism, so I was wondering if that's an allusion there, and possibly metaphor, just making a metaphor of it, relating what plants do to what colonists do. Now, in terms of the meaning, it is kind of complex this time. Oh, point of view. I thought that might be a good one too. Complex relationship among the speaker, implied audience, and plant life. That's a lot of relationships. That's a three-way relationship. And so I'm a little bit confused here. Wanted to use this GIF. And so this is a pretty complicated. And I'm kind of struggling with that I need to show that there is some sort of relationship between the speaker, the implied audience. Okay, so I got to figure out what that is, and I think that's especially complicated this year. Okay, moving on. Actually, let's go to the prompt. Actually, let's go to this poem. And I want to read it first of all, and then I'm just going to kind of show you some things that I noticed about it. Let's read it together and see what you think. What do you notice? And here we definitely want to use our how to process. If you remember that, I posted the link for that in the stream. Go through that process: enjoyment, meaning, structure, language, mood, tone, and then ideally we can get to the point where we can write a body paragraph about that. So here's the poem. Plants. Plants are deceptive, looking as if once rooted they know their places, not like animals like us always running around leaving traces. Yet from the way they breed, and twine, from their exhibitionist and rather prolific nature, we must infer a rather not a sinister, not sadistic, grand design. Perhaps you've regarded as being armies of mangrove on the march, rooted in the air, clinging tender cells everywhere. The world is full of shoots on conquest, invasive seedlings seeking wide open spaces, material for explosive dispersal in capsules and seed cases. Maybe you haven't quite ambitions of hitchhiking, birds on your sweater, surf riding, nuts bobbing on the ocean, parachuting seeds, and other air traffic dropping in. And what about those special agents called flowers, dressed, perfumed, and made up for romancing insects, bats, birds, bees, even you? Don't deny it, my dear. I've seen you sniff and exclaim. Believe me, innocent, that sweet fruit, that berry is nothing more than ovary, the instrument to seduce you into scattering plant progeny. Vast cosmic program that once set in motion cannot be undone, though we become plant food and earth wind down. They'll outlast us. They were always there, one step ahead of us. Plants gone to seed, generating the original profligate extravagant, reckless, improvident, weed. Okay, I'm going to switch here really quick. All right, no one is here, so we're just continue. Let's see if I'm not sure how long we've been going. I think a lot longer than that. Oh yeah, 10 minutes. Okay. I was unable to get my document camera, but I'm going to see if I can do this a little bit. Let's see if this works. Yep. Okay. I want to show you some of the things that I noticed about this. And I'll try to go through the different stages of the how to read a poem process. So first of all, just enjoyment. I want to look at some of the meaning related things. And if you remember, so I do notice that there's a simile right there where we're relating plants to human beings. And that makes me wonder, they're always running around leaving traces. Are plants like human beings in the sense that they are restless and personification? There's kind of a long extended personification that occurs here. And as you can see, there are different characteristics that go along with that personification. Sinister, imperialistic. Further down, sorry about violent, violence, recklessness, and incorrigible. Okay, so there's pretty strong actual personal qualities that are being assigned to these plants. Actually, over here, manipulative and seductive. So a lot of stuff there. Now, there's also a method here where the seeds are related to explosive material, which also gives you that violent, destructive feel. So there's actually a pretty good case for plants are being described as being this sort of violent, unstoppable, reckless force, which has a lot of us as human beings. Now, I want to move on to structure and language. There are some interesting things here. Now, it did look like there might be some rhyme, but it really kind of broke some of the syntax. Okay, so there are these short, blunt sentences. There's a bit of a run-on sentence a little bit further down to the other side. There's a fragment. There's a comma splice. And there's, which is, you're supposed to use maybe a, and you don't. So in some ways, what I'm noticing here is, in terms of the sentences, a lot of violation of the rules. Things that you should do. Let's look at some other things about the structure. First of all, there are quatrains. Now that seems like it's imposing some order. Sentences are pretty heedless of the structure. They just keep on going. They're pretty much all jammed. And there's kind of an overflowing of boundaries, transgressing of whatever boundaries are there. They really don't care about boundaries. And in some ways, it actually kind of emphasizes the fact of the transgressive, restless, destructive nature of plants. Again, being not unlike us, but I think both the speaker and the audience being human beings. Let's see if there's anything else structural. There are some, I think just generally, some of the misuse of sentences, like fragments and run-ons, comma splices, asyndeton, necessarily grammar problem, but, a little bit different, is showing that the order, there's a breaking of rules. syntactical rules. I'm sorry, this is really bad. Okay. Now let's go on to language. Some language-related things that I noticed were down at the bottom is, you could talk about this as structure possibly, but ocean, bobbing on the ocean. Similar over here. That berry is nothing more than ovary. You know, that should be in. All right, moving on. Similar kind of thing, a little bit further down. This should have a helping verb. It felt a little bit weird. The motion cannot be undone, although food and earth wind down. It should either be winds down or down. So really, what I'm taking away from that is kind of a lack of following of rules. Again, maybe showing that recklessness, that playfulness, that rebelliousness. In terms of the speaker, actually, I do notice here this kind of interesting thing. Believe me, innocent. Capitalizing that. That is kind of a diction-related thing. And I pick up on a little bit of irony. So innocent. There is a bit of verbal irony. There's a bit of a satiric tone there. Okay, moving on. Again, some tone-related things. And I think here we start to talk about some of the meanings, relationships. So there does seem to be something of a flirtatious, playful kind of tone, which does imply a little bit of a relationship from the way they breed. Excuse me. You know, so I'm actually kind of saying something taboo there. Moving over to the other side. My dear. And then the innocent again. We're kind of implying something of a flirtatious or mocking tone, but mocking that's kind of mocking in a flirtatious way. Okay, anything else? I think that's pretty much all that I've come up with. So I did want to kind of see what you guys thought of that. Let me go over and see if we have anyone we don't. I just want to actually kind of close here then, pretty much, in saying that what we would want to do is, let me get this booted up again, is we'd want to think about what do we think the meaning is there. Now, let's boot this up again, and I'm sorry that this is taking so long. For some reason, I'm very slow on the uptake today. Close a few things. Okay. So, you know, this prompt came out. What do we make of that? Now, I just think I want to share with you, some people kind of read into this. We do want to say, what do we think the nature of that relationship is? You know, some of the speaker, the implied audience, and plant life. After this came out, I thought it was kind of interesting. Right after the fact, there was kind of an exchange. Olive Sr. has a Twitter account, and she was posting about her plants, which were actually in her apartment. You can check this out if you're interested. This is like pretty much the day of the exam. What did your poem mean? Why do you hate plants? And Olive Sr. actually responded, I don't hate plants. Quite the opposite. My poem shows how clever plants are in devising so many methods for ensuring their survival. Read again. Okay, and obviously tons of people kind of listening in on this, following Olive Sr., seeing what she has to say about this. Actually, this may have been not appropriate. College Board might not have been happy about this. Now, continuing on, I have another question. Do the plants represent white colonizers? Not really. But in the poem, plant activities are related to the human. You can see parallels. Not everything in the poem is revealed to the author. The best poems invite the readers in. Your own interpretation is valid if you can support it with evidence from the poem. So anyways, we've gone through this process. I think that's a good process to do. But we did that. I'm just going to kind of leave you with my thoughts about this poem, and then I'm actually going to invite you to go to how students did on this in 2018. If you go to this link, what you'll find is it has 3 essays from students who attempted this prompt that year. And I think the first thing we need to establish is, what is the complex relationship? And I think the complex relationship personally isn't anything like a hidden meaning, like this is colonization. Now, there are some interesting things there, but I really want to impress on you that we want to avoid that sort of hidden meaning kind of thing. If you go onto that Twitter thread, you'll notice that a lot of people kind of took this stab at hidden meaning. What is she really talking about? And Olive Sr. basically came down and said, nope, I wasn't talking about that at all. It's not, for one, poets don't do that generally. They don't hide meaning in a poem. But also, it's kind of dangerous. It's a very big risk to kind of go out on a limb like that in the middle of a test without being able to look anything up and try to take a stab at what you think the meaning is. So I would recommend don't do that, and just try to nuance or characterize, what are they asking for? The complex relationship. And I think it would be something along the lines of that there is this kind of shared recklessness, ability, what are some of the other words? Manipulative, transgressive kind of attitude that is ascribed to the plants. And what are some of the ways that I would convey that? What are some of the literary techniques that I could point to? I think figurative language would be a really good one. I mean, I saw examples of simile. I saw an example of a metaphor. I saw lots of examples of personification. I probably could do a whole thing on personification. I think the structure was kind of interesting, in the way that the structure actually pushed the boundaries of what's syntactically appropriate. And did that convey, that kind of idea that plants are transgressive, plants, push those boundaries, plants are rebellious and have a lot in common with us as both the speaker and the audience. What else? I think that there were some things that we can point to in terms of language, the way she used language in this poem, as I mentioned. I thought that there were some things with, leaving out articles, like I'm talking more primitively, bobbing on ocean, is nothing more than ovary, become plant food and earth wind down. I mean, it's almost like caveman talk. And that almost shows a lack of formality, a recklessness, a rebelliousness, a breaking out against form. There are some pretty interesting things that I think you could point to in literary devices that convey that. I'd like you to take a look at these essays instead of one of my essays. Why don't you go to these essays? The first one that you're going to read is an 8, which is just below 9, which is the highest score. Second one is going to be medium range. It's a 5. You'll see a little bit less developed, a little bit less convincing. And then the last one is kind of like a swing and a miss. It is not a very good response. It is a lower half. And I think that it's really good to look at some of these examples that the College Board gives us, and see what they point out. Now, at the end of all that, they kind of explain why did they get the scores that they got. But I think you'll have an appreciation for that just from your knowledge this year. Okay, so that's all I have for you tonight. Hopefully that's helpful to you, and we'll talk to you soon.